Well, good evening, everybody. As they say in the movies, take 10, snap. I'm going to attempt to do this again. Between text messages, phone calls, and random interruptions, meowing cat, I'm going to try and make a decent video. Hopefully, I won't make it too long and winded. But anyway. So today I managed to pick up some items I've been looking for a while. Some of the items I picked up are old, not made anymore. Anyhow, I had some powder and some wads here that I wasn't using, and one of my channel subscribers and YouTube buddies, Russell, decided to make a trip up this way and meet up with me. We made an exchange, and he got what was useful to him, and I got something that I am just so grateful to have. Like, I couldn't thank him enough for making the effort to go through some stuff and see if he actually had these things. So that being said, you've heard me talk before about the CIL RAM wads. They were a wad that was made by Canadian Industries Limited some years ago. And for those of you who don't know who CIL Industries was in Canada, you may remember seeing things like this with the CIL logo. I don't know if that's going to show, but anyway. Made in Canada by Canadian Industries Limited, Montreal. Now, this box is probably like from the 1950s era, maybe late 50s or so. They also made, that's rifle bullets, those component bullets actually, by the way. Still full box, brand new. You don't see that too often. And quite collectible. And these happen to be for the British 303. And they were the 180 grain copper point expanding 311 diameter. The CPE, copper point expanding, similar to a Remington bronze point. If you guys remember seeing those like from the 70s and the earlier days, I used to have them here for 30-06. They were like a 165 grain bronze point. They were like real accurate. They hit hard too. It was a good deer bullet. Anyhow, they also made shot shell wads, for reloading. These happen to be 20 gauge cards. I got several boxes of 12 gauge. I've got some 16 gauge and so on. But they also made like commercial shot shells, like such. Give me a second here. We used to go hunting with Grandpa and Uncle Joe and all them fellas. You'd probably end up, go hunting ducks or partridge with them, and you see these things. Purple shells, the Imperial. The orange ones, the Canuck, Canadian thing. Dominion Canuck, Canada, 16. Well, that company made these as well. They also made a wad. Now, I don't know commercially what shot shell that this wad was used in. But how I came across this was back in, I don't know, like 2009, 2010, something like that. I was at a gun show in Bible Hill. And I was walking around with my friend Peter, and we were looking around, and this guy had a big table, like, it was like 4 or 5 tables, like a big display, I should say, 5 tables or so. And he had a little bit of everything, from guns to wood stocks to parts, scopes, you name it. And underneath the table, he had boxes full of stuff, and it just had a sign there, and it said, items available below with an arrow. So I was just going through the boxes, and I happened to come across one box where there was quite a bit of stuff in the box that was useful to me. And I didn't want to just go buy them individually. I said, I wonder if the guy would take an offer on the whole box. And this was on a Sunday we went. And everybody knows at the gun shows on Sunday that nobody wants to drag it home if they don't have to. Lighter the load, heavier in the pocket. That's the way it goes. So I'd asked the guy, I said, by chance, I said, would you sell like the box of items? He says, yeah, I'd do that. I said, well, what would you want for all this box? So I picked up the box and I put it on the table and he looked through it. He said, well, young fella, he said, how about $10 takes the whole box? He said, you're doing me a favor and I'm doing you a favor. I said, fair enough, $10 is $10. So I gave him the $10 and I took the box of stuff and I reefed through it. And in doing so, I found a bag, a little clear plastic bag with a twist tie on it. And it looks something like these, which I got today. These are the CIL RAM wads that I learned today are a 2-piece wad. And here they are. But when I went to Bible Hill, the guy only had this portion of the wad in a bag. All these little cups. That's the base part. So here's the shot cup. And it's got like a little set of legs on it with a seal. And they go together. Like that. To create said wad. Now, there was another type of wad that was made by Longgg, or Lage, or however it's pronounced, called a uni-wad, and it was like a 2-piece wad, something like this. But this is the CIL RAM wad. So, we'll forget about the top part for a second, and we're going to talk about this bottom one. And with the bottom one, I'm just going to grab something here. I was sitting here one night going through some stuff, and I thought, you know, back in the day, guys had Damascus twist barrel shotguns and old style hammer guns, short chambers, even with fluid barrels. But they had short chambers. And the majority of them were only proofed for black powder. So I wondered, you know, you go to a gun shop, you go to a gun store or whatever, you don't find low pressure slug loads or black powder slugs. So I was thinking to myself, what could I do to use, something, you know, like, if I wanted to go, like, where the hunting seasons cross over, like deer, rabbits, partridge, you know, a 12 gauge does it all, they say, right? You can spread shot, like bird shot, buck shot, or a ball. But for something like this, my Army and Navy, you know, a nice quality English double, beautiful barrels, you know, a nice gun, nice and tight, well cared for. So why couldn't you use it to take a deer if you were going through the woods walking? And you happen to come across a clearing and you want to sit off to the side and maybe wait to see if a deer walks through. Why couldn't you use something like this? Now, this particular gun is choked cylinder bore wide open on one barrel, and the other barrel is improved modified. So, I thought, this was back in the day because I've had this for quite some time, and my other guns. What did they use? So, I was at that same gun show. I bought some old lead ball slugs made by, you know, they look just like this here. You know, the old high brass, roll crimp. You know, this is a spread shot, but like a bird shot. But you get the idea that you'd see the ball exposed here with a brown hair or a fiber wad, but it was like a 2-piece wad. So your ball would set in the shell, and it would be like canopied over, and all you could see is just a little bit of the ball exposed, and the bottom part of the ball was sitting into a little paper fiber cup on top of a stack of fiber wads and a load of smokeless or black powder. But back then they were loaded to the pressures appropriate to the period. Nowadays you get a slug that's like a Federal 1-ounce slug, and you read on the box, 547 grain full bore slug, and that's coming out at 1600 plus feet per second. And when you think of a gun like this, well, that's a bit much for the old girl, or it's a bit much for this old girl. But back in the day, this is what the guys were using. So those old lead ball loads, that's what kept these things on the deer. So you can't buy them anymore. They don't make them. But I said, there's got to be a way to mimic them. How can I get around it? One guy said, oh, it's pretty simple. Use a 69 caliber ball and cut the petals off of a wad and set the ball on top and roll crimp it nice and tight inside. And he says, oh, it should work just fine. Okay, that's all said and great and good information, so long as you have 69 caliber balls to use. I had all kinds of wads that you had no balls. And another guy says, well, buy yourself a mold. Well, then that means I had to go and buy lead, melt, make my balls, whatever, and no guarantees it was even going to work. Some people said they were good, some people said they weren't. I've watched videos online, like Tal Flatermouse and the Shotgun Scientists, and those guys there, like, mess with the lead balls and different slugs and different wads. I've talked to those people. I've conversed with them. We've had ideas, and some of them were good, some of them were not. Here's one of my failed attempts. This one here was a lead ball that I made into a portion of a steel shot wad, and the issue I had at the time, I corrected it later, but the skirts were very thin on that wad, and they blew, gas blew by, and they weren't very consistent. So that's another story in itself. But I was trying to create that saboted lead ball, supported lead ball, in a 12 gauge wad, because I couldn't find my wads anymore that I was using and had good luck with. So what I was doing is I was taking a 62 caliber or 20 gauge ball, 600 diameter. These are measured out at about 603, 604, something around there. These happen to be pure like wheel weights, and I've got some here that are pure lead, like this one. That's pure lead. This one's wheel weights, but same idea. So I was taking the ram wad that I had, the bottom portion, and I set the ball in there like that. And again, I have a supported lead ball in a cup. Very sturdy cup too. They're these you can't squish these at all. Like they're really stiff, rigid. So these will hold up well under pressure. They should not collapse. They shouldn't deform. But where I'm going to use them with black powder. Now, black powder and plastic don't mix. When you shoot a wad like this out of a gun with black powder, you just set this on top of the black powder, it's going to work. It's going to go bang. It's going to go out. It's going to shoot. But every few shots, what happens is the flame from the black powder melts this, and it coats the inside of the bore, and after a while it builds up, and the whole bore starts to restrict and get tighter, and it increases chamber pressure. So back in the day, they didn't use plastic wads with black powder. They used fiber wads like this, cushion wads made of like hair or felt or cork. And then they would use gas sealing wads that were like compressed cardboard, like rigid ones like this, to go over the powder. And then, and you make a wad column, like you'd put this and then put your cushion wad, and then you take another one of these and go on top. Then you would take your, whatever your wad is, and go on top of that and make a column. And once you get that done, everything's in there, your powder charge, whatnot, you end up with something that looks like this. Your paper hulls or plastic, doesn't matter when you're doing this, but the roll crimp is the ticket. If you're lucky enough to have one of the vintage rolling tools like this, that's great, but you can get the ones that have this little head on the end of a drill or a drill press, and you can roll crimp them as such. But if you can get yourself one of these old tools, it's nice to make the shells with paper hulls and the old gear, and old gear, old shells for old guns. This thing was built in 1893, so when this gun was around, plastic shot shells didn't exist. You had brass shot shells, or you had these paper shot shells. So this is what you had. So as far as the slug loads and lead ball loads go, could not find any of those wads anywhere. They couldn't have been very popular. Reloading might not have been a huge thing. But anyway, Russell comes through, says, I think I've got some of those. We'll make a deal. So he met up with me today, and there's like over 200 of these, and all the matching top components. As I said, it's a two-piece wad. There's your little pedestal for like 4 posts. I'll turn it around in a minute. You'll see it better. It's hard to see it with the lighting in here, but anyway, take my word for it. That's the 2 pieces, like I told you, that go together like that and make the entire wad. So I didn't know that when I had the other ones that they were part of a 2-piece wad. I thought this was it. So I looked at it, I'm like, my God, they must have been for some awful light loads. You couldn't get half an ounce of lead in there. I said even a 410 shell would filled it. So I found out later on through another source that these are a 2-piece wad, and he said what you got is the bottom half. He said if you're going to want to load with them, you got to do this and use the 2 pieces together. So that wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to recreate that lead ball load. So at the time, I weighed the lead ball that I had and that wad, that portion of wad, and it came out to about 7/8 of an ounce, just maybe a smidge over. So you're not going to go find load data for this. So I started conservatively with black powder, because black powder, of course, is what I was going to use in this, or a substitute that's equivalent to black powder, which in this gun here with the Damascus barrels, I have used Pirate X, black powder, and 777. All fine, no problems, worked well. Like I said, no pressure signs, and the gun performed as it's supposed to. So I'm not going to say this is the particular one that I would take and use, but it's nice to have a variety of ammunition with you, that if you decide that, you're walking through the woods and you open her up and you put the slug in this side here, or the ball with the open bore, and you put a bird shot, or maybe, I don't know, just for let's say this was a black powder buckshot, which I have some loaded, so I have it out. But you load something like this in the inner barrel, and you have a combination. Or if you're just still hunting rabbits or partridge or whatever, and you got your black powder round in one side with number 6 bird shot, and then you have your other shell loaded with the lead ball in the other barrel. Just bear in mind which trigger does which, and don't put a lead ball into a partridge, there won't be too much left of it. But anyway, so what I did today also is I picked up some of the propellant that I did use in those particular loads, which I haven't had in a while, which is this stuff here, 777. It's a muzzle loading propellant, black powder, sulfur-free substitute. I got a thing of 2F and 3F here. 3F in the smaller bore, like 16. 2F in the larger bore, but you can use 2F and 16 as well. But I always used 3F powders in my 16 gauge. I always found it was better. But anyway, I was using this one in that load, and I had tested it in a shotgun that I had. And we were getting velocities of about 13 to 1400 feet per second of the charge I was using. I was using 100 grains of loose, and that's as much as I could get into the shell. I couldn't get any more, just with the wad column and to get a nice roll crimp. I just didn't have enough room in a 2.5-inch shell. So 100 grains of this, compacted it like a compressed load, a nice crimp, the ball, the wad, and everything set in there. At 40 yards, that lead ball penetrated 2 inches into a birch tree out of an old Remington side-by-side that I had Damascus. So I shot a few that day, and I was very pleased with the accuracy. And I tried them in another gun I had at the time, and it wasn't as good as the Remington, but it was certainly usable. I was keeping them within about a 5-inch group at about 40 yards, and I mean that's something like that. So that's plenty of accuracy for deer hunting. Taking a deer behind it and taking a lung shot or a shoulder shot, or being said. So I picked up those today. Very grateful to have them. Also, he was at the last gun show, and in his passing, calls me and says, "Hey, you need anything?" So, also got a pound of 2F Black Schutzen. I use this in shot shells as well, but I more or less keep this for my percussion shotgun, my old English gun, my Hopkins, and my Thompson Center 50 caliber. I generally keep that stuff on hand for that. I'll use Pyredex, and now I've got the 777 for the shot shells. The 209 primers aren't too fussy about lighting anything off. They pretty much go bing bang, no problem. Sometimes the propellant equivalents like Pyredex and 777s in anything with number 11 caps, unless using Magnum caps, can give delayed hang fires and whatnot. And I didn't want a chance with that, so I stuck with the real stuff. Lower ignition point, I find, and it works better just to keep status quo. And the 777 will work with this, no problem. So remember what I said with these Damascus guns, and you look on modern ammunition and you see not for use in Damascus twist barrels. So this is what you have to do if you want to use this to go out in the field. Regardless, if you want to hunt birds with it, you've got to load black powder shot shells for this thing. And if you want to go hunting a deer, you also have to load black powder ball shot. Or if you could get a slug mold, and you're going to use a Lee slug, and make sure you've got a nice open choke, like this one is cylinder bore on one side, completely open, no restriction, and the other one has a improved modified or a modified choke. So that barrel with the cylinder bore would be just lovely to shoot with that. It would shoot just as well. I mean, the gun will only shoot as good as the guy behind it, and it should provide enough accuracy at a moderate range. Remember, guys, you're not shooting a country mile. This is something for shooting up close and personal, or a wing shot on a bird or a ground shot on a rabbit or something. But I mean, they did use these for shooting large game. Don't kid yourself. And as far as using smokeless powder in that load with the lead ball, I have done it. There are no published loads for that, other than the fact that I weighed the projectile, and I based my loads on 1 ounce, 7/8 to 1 ounce 12 gauge loads, and they're not really potent loads. Like, they're on the bottom end of the spectrum as far as velocity, and they're just like upland bird loads. But you do you, and you consult a load manual. Like, you go and grab yourself an old Lyman load manual like this, and you look inside here, and there's just pages upon pages of 1 ounce field loads, 12 gauge or 16 gauge, whatever the case may be. And I think it's a good place to start. And a skilled reloader will know when the limit has been reached. There are telltale signs. You watch for it. Do I recommend this to a beginner? No, I don't. This is something that I would say to a seasoned veteran reloader, someone who knows what they're doing, experienced. Uh, and still, you have to err on the side of caution. You got to watch your powder charges. You got to watch your wad height. You got to watch your wad pressures, primer type, hull types, you name it. Black powder is a lot more forgiving. It's when you deal with smokeless powders and different burn rates, that's where the problem starts. And some of these old guns, even though they're not Damascus barrels, like let's say the Jansen, which has simulated Damascus barrels, but they are fluid steel barrels. Somebody etched, or a company etched, the pattern on there to make it look like a fancy old Damascus shotgun. But this is just a Belgian mule, Belgian workhorse, 2 3/4 chambered, standard 12 gauge, and it shot the other day fine with, I loaded some old bullseye rounds, which I took from that manual, and I shot them here, nice solid primer strikes. They shot really well, and they opened up nice, and there was no bulges on the brass. It was all said and good. I thought I was recording when I was shooting, and I had it set up on the window of my car with my holder, and I forgot to press record. So I was talking to a screen just like I am now, but nothing was recording. So I'll hopefully get another day out where I can try it and do some demonstrating and shooting. But in the meantime, now that I got those components, I'm going to attempt to make some of the ball loads. I've got to dig out my lead balls I have. I've got a good supply of them. And now I have lots of powder to use and wads. And I have Mr. Houghton to thank for that. So if you're watching, thank you very much. It really was a pleasure meeting you and your wife today. And hopefully we can meet again sometime soon in the future. Maybe do some shooting or something time or other. And like I said, that's what shooting's all about. You help your fellow shooters, you know. He watched a thing I posted about, and I commented on, and we chatted about it. And, the guy helped me out, and I helped him out with stuff I had here. So, at the end of the day, everybody's all good. Everybody gets what they need, and we go on from there. Now, I also acquired 2 projects, and believe me, they're projects. I picked up an old Belgian underlever 12 gauge. That's, believe me, it's a project. That's not going to be done today, tomorrow, next week, next month. That's a project. That's going to be taking some time, and it can be restored back. There's no qualms. But the one that I want to try and work on is my English Enos James side by side. That's got the thumb lever on the side that opens it. There's no top lever, and it's a hammer double. But the firing pins are missing. The bushings are there, the firing pins are missing. So if anybody has an Enos James Company side lever 12 gauge with twist steel barrels kicking around, that's got firing pins and bushings into it, and you want to make a trade, and you're local to me here within the province, within driving, or don't mind throwing it in the mail if they want to deliver it, hit me up with a message and just, see if we can get in contact with each other. It's either that or I get a set of firing pins made for it, which would probably be the easiest thing to do. I've got a good friend that's a very well-known gunsmith, Mr. Brian Longgg. He knows this stuff. And I'll tell you, if anybody wants to get something done, Langg's Long Arms in Sunnybrae, Nova Scotia, outside New Glasgow. You look him up, and he's probably one of the most knowledgeable gunsmiths that I've met in my life. As far as like the older antique stuff, and just his ability to make custom things and improve things and whatnot. His work is unreal, unheard of. Like he's good. So I may ask him to view the gun and see if he can make a set of pins for it, which I know he can make them no problem. But I wouldn't mind finding an old gun for parts to have just kick around. But I know it's like everything else. It's like a needle in the haystack. Well, those are like a needle in the haystack. These are the first ones that I've seen since 2009, 2010. So there has to be another Enos James side lever opening 12 gauge kicking around this world somewheres that somebody wants to get rid of. So that being said, I'll leave you with that. And again, hope everybody enjoys the rest of their evening. It's always a pleasure making a video when I can for you. If people want to see a video on the Enos and James, I can't do a shooting video on it, and it's not in shooting condition at the moment, but I could do a video on it to show its operation and what it's all about. But it is a complete gun aside from the firing pins. Everything is there. Just a few things have to be addressed. It's got some play in the action. Typical old gun. It'll likely have to be tightened up, but I think it's a candidate to be a shooter. So the other gun, I don't know. We'll see. It may be a wall hanger at one point or something, but needless to say, I'll leave you with that, and we'll check you guys out later, and enjoy the rest of your evening. See you later.